The dust settled around her boots as Jolene Davies watched the bounty hunter drag a bloodied man through the streets of Murphy's, California. And she wondered if staying in this God-forsaken town would be her worst mistake yet. It was the summer of 1878, and she had been running for 3 months straight. Running from her past, from the accusations, from the memory of her employer's wife pointing a trembling finger and screaming thief, while Jolene stood there with nothing but her word against a rich woman's rage. The pearl necklace had been found in her quarters, planted there by someone who wanted her gone, but nobody believed a housemaid from Kentucky. So she ran, taking only what she could carry and whatever dignity remained after being stripped of her reputation. Murphy's was supposed to be temporary, just another stop on her way to somewhere safer, somewhere she could disappear entirely. The mining town nestled in the Sierra Nevada foothills still buzzed with enough activity to offer work, though the big gold rush days had faded into memory. She had found lodging in a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson, a stern woman with kind eyes who asked few questions when Jolene paid 2 weeks' rent up front. The sun hung low in the sky, painting everything in shades of amber and rust. Jolene walked down Main Street, her worn calico dress collecting dust with each step. She passed the saloon where piano music drifted through the swinging doors, the general store with its painted sign promising fair prices, and the livery stable that sat at the edge of town like a worn sentinel. That was where she saw him. He stood beside a chestnut stallion, his tall frame bent slightly as he examined the horse's foreleg. His hat shadowed his face, but she could see the strong line of his jaw, darkened with several days of stubble. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing tanned, muscular forearms. There was something in the way he touched the horse, gentle despite his obvious strength, that made her slow her steps. The horse whinnied and stamped, clearly agitated, and the man spoke in low, soothing tones she could not quite make out. She should have kept walking. She had learned in her months of running that the best way to avoid trouble was to avoid people altogether. But something pulled her toward the stable, perhaps the memory of her grandfather's farm in Kentucky, the horses she had loved as a girl before life had turned hard and complicated. "Easy there, Senator," the man was saying to the horse. "I know it hurts, but fighting me will not make it better." Jolene stopped at the fence, her hands resting on the rough wooden rail. "He favoring that leg bad." The man looked up, and she got her first clear look at his face. He was probably 30 or so, with blue eyes that held a weariness she recognized, the kind that came from carrying weight that could not be set down. A scar cut through his right eyebrow, pale against his sun-darkened skin. "Stone bruise, I reckon," he said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate in her chest. "Picked up a rock somewhere on the trail from Angel's camp. He has been limping since this morning. You come far, far enough." He turned his attention back to the horse, dismissing her, but she did not take offense. She understood the instinct to keep strangers at arm's length. She watched him work for another moment, then made a decision that surprised her. "I could help if you want. I grew up with horses. My grandfather trained them for racing back in Kentucky." He paused, considering her with those tired blue eyes. She saw him taking her measure, noting her threadbare dress, the dust on her boots, the carpet bag she still carried because she had nowhere yet to unpack it. Whatever he saw must have satisfied some internal test, because he nodded once. "Would appreciate it. Name is Quinn Nolan, but most call me Quinn. Jolene Davies." She set her bag down carefully and approached the horse, moving slowly so as not to spook him further. Senator's ears flicked toward her, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. Quinn watched her approach with a careful attention that made her self-conscious. She pushed the feeling aside and focused on the horse, running her hands along his neck in long, soothing strokes. "There now, handsome. Nobody is going to hurt you. Let us just have a look at that leg." The horse calmed under her touch, though he still trembled slightly. She kept one hand on his shoulder and bent to examine the injured hoof. Quinn had been right. A stone bruise, nasty but not permanent. The frog of the hoof was swollen and hot to the touch. "Needs to be packed with clay and wrapped," she said, straightening. "Keep him off it for a few days, cold water soaks if you can manage it. He will be right as rain within the week." "You know your horses," Quinn said, and there was something like respect in his voice. "I know a few things." She stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how the fading sunlight caught in his eyes. "Your livery man should have what you need. Stable is closed until morning." Owner took his wife to Sacramento to visit her sister. Quinn pulled his hat off and ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration evident in the gesture. "I can manage the packing and wrapping, but I will need to find somewhere to board him for the week." "There is space here," Jolene pointed out. "Plenty of empty stalls. And no permission to use them. Hal Thompson does not take kindly to folks helping themselves to his property." Quinn settled his hat back on his head. "Learned that the hard way 6 months back when I was passing through and thought to water my horse from his trough without asking first. He has got a memory longer than the California Trail." Jolene bit her lip, thinking. She did not know this man, had no reason to help him further, but something about the situation bothered her. The horse needed care, and Quinn clearly did not have many options. "Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house. She has a small stable out back. Just 2 stalls, but one is empty. She might let you use it for a fair price." Quinn studied her again with that measuring look. "You staying there? Just arrived today. Then you do not know if she will agree." "No," Jolene admitted, "but I could ask. She seems decent enough." Something shifted in Quinn's expression, a softening around his eyes. "Why would you do that? Help a stranger?" The question caught her off guard, and she found herself answering more honestly than she intended. "Maybe because I know what it is like to need help and have nobody offer it." The words hung between them in the dusty air, heavy with implication. Quinn did not press, did not ask the questions she could see forming behind his eyes. Instead, he simply nodded. "I would be grateful for the introduction, Miss Davies." They walked back toward the boarding house as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Quinn led Senator slowly, mindful of the horse's injury. Jolene found herself matching his pace, their footsteps falling into an easy rhythm on the dirt road. "What brings you to Murphy's?" she asked, then immediately regretted the question. She did not want him asking the same of her, but Quinn only said, "Work. Heard there might be some ranches hiring on hands for the season." "You are a ranch hand, among other things." His jaw tightened slightly. "Done whatever paid the last few years." There was a story there Jolene could tell, pain and regret wrapped up in those simple words. She recognized it because she carried her own version of the same weight, Mrs. Patterson was sweeping her front porch when they arrived, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She stopped mid-sweep, her sharp eyes taking in Quinn and his limping horse. "Mrs. Patterson," Jolene said quickly, before the older woman could speak. "This is Quinn Nolan. His horse picked up a stone bruise and needs rest for a few days. I told him you might have stable space available, for a fair rate." The widow set her broom aside and descended the porch steps with the careful movements of someone whose joints ached in the evening. She walked around Senator, examining him with a practiced eye. "Chestnut stallion, good lines. You take care of him proper." "Best I can," Quinn said. "He is all I got in the world worth keeping." Mrs. Patterson made a noncommittal sound in her throat. 50 cents a day includes feed and water. You do your own mucking and grooming. No drinking, no gambling, no bringing trouble to my door. Yes, madam. And you will fix that loose board on my back fence. Noticed it this morning and my back is not up to the task. Consider it done. The widow nodded, satisfied. Stable is around back. Get him settled. Miss Davies, I will expect you for supper in an hour. I do not hold meals for latecomers. She returned to her porch, leaving them to navigate the narrow path that led around the house. The stable was small but well-maintained, with 2 generous stalls and a tack room that smelled of leather and hay. The empty stall had fresh straw, and there was a water pump just outside the door. They worked together in companionable silence, getting Senator settled. Quinn found the supplies he needed to pack and wrap the injured hoof, while Jolene filled the water trough and measured out grain. The horse relaxed once he was in the stall, the comfort of 4 walls and food easing his anxiety. You have a hand with horses, Quinn said as they finished. The last light of day slanted through the stable door, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. Your grandfather taught you well. He was a good man, patient, said horses could sense what was in your heart, so you had to approach them with honesty. She paused, running her hand along Senator's nose. I think people could learn something from that philosophy. Maybe so. Quinn leaned against the stall door, watching her. Though in my experience, people are considerably less forgiving than horses. You might be right about that. Miss Davies. He spoke her name like he was testing its weight. I am grateful for your help today. I am not usually in the position of needing charity. It was not charity, she said, meeting his eyes. I wanted to help. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that defied easy explanation. 2 people who had been knocked around by life, standing in a small stable in a mining town, finding an unexpected moment of connection. The spell broke when Mrs. Patterson rang the supper bell, the sound clanging across the property. You had better go, Quinn said. She meant what she said about not holding meals. What about you? I will grab something at the saloon. Need to ask around about work anyway. Jolene hesitated, wanting to say something more but not knowing what. Finally, she settled on. Good luck with the job hunting. Thank you, and Miss Davies, maybe I will see you tomorrow. Someone needs to check on Senator's progress. Maybe you will. She left him there in the gathering darkness and made her way to Mrs. Patterson's dining room, where 3 other boarders were already seated around a scarred wooden table. Supper was beef stew and biscuits, simple but filling. The other boarders were men who worked at the sawmill up the hill, tired and more interested in their food than conversation. Mrs. Patterson asked no questions, for which Jolene was grateful. But as she lay in her narrow bed that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the boarding house settling around her, Jolene found her thoughts returning to Quinn Nolan and his gentle hands on his horse, the sadness in his eyes that matched her own. She told herself it meant nothing, that she would be moving on soon enough, that getting close to anyone was a risk she could not afford. Yet when she finally slept, she dreamed of Kentucky bluegrass and her grandfather's farm. And in the dream, a tall man with a scarred eyebrow stood beside her, his presence solid and reassuring in a way that made her chest ache when she woke. Morning came with the rooster's crow and Mrs. Patterson's heavy footsteps in the hall. Jolene dressed quickly in her other dress, a faded blue cotton that had seen better days, and went down to breakfast. The widow had set out porridge and coffee, and Jolene ate quickly, her mind already on the stable out back. She told herself she was only concerned about the horse. Senator was dozing when she entered the stable, but he lifted his head at her approach and whickered softly. The wrapping on his hoof looked secure, and there was no fresh swelling that she could see. She had brought an apple from the kitchen, permission secured from Mrs. Patterson with the promise to peel potatoes for supper. The horse crunched it happily, his soft lips gentle against her palm. Making friends, I see. She turned to find Quinn leaning in the stable doorway, morning light haloing him from behind. He looked tired, like maybe he had not slept much, but he smiled at the sight of his horse eating from her hand. "Just checking on the patient," she said. "Appreciate it." He moved into the stable and she caught the scent of soap and something else, maybe saddle leather or pine. "How is he looking?" "Better. The swelling is already going down. You did a good job with the packing." Quinn ran his hands over Senator's leg, checking her assessment. His movements were sure and competent, and she found herself watching the play of muscle in his forearms, the careful attention he gave to the task. "You find work last night?" she asked, more to distract herself than anything. "Maybe." "Fellow at the saloon said the Double R Ranch about 5 miles out needs hands. They are moving cattle to higher pasture for the summer and need help with the drive. Pays decent," he said. "That is good, if it works out." He straightened, brushing straw from his pants. "Owner wants to interview prospects this afternoon. Question is whether Senator will be fit to ride that far." Jolene frowned, looking at the horse's injured leg. "He should not be ridden for at least 3 or 4 days. Even then, 5 miles is pushing it. I know." Frustration edged Quinn's voice. "But I cannot afford to wait. The job will be filled by then." "Could you borrow a horse?" "With what money?" "I've got enough to pay Mrs. Patterson for Senator's board and maybe 3 more nights of sleeping rough. After that." He trailed off, but the implication was clear. Jolene made another one of those impulsive decisions that seemed to come easier around this man. "I could ride out with you. On Senator. He knows me now and I am lighter than you. If we go slow and walk most of the way, it should not hurt him too much. You could walk alongside." Quinn stared at her. "Miss Davies, I could not ask you to do that." "You are not asking, I am offering." "Why?" The question again, sharper this time. "You do not know me. For all you know, I could be leading you out to the middle of nowhere with bad intentions." She met his eyes steadily. "Are you?" "No." "Then I will go with you." Something flickered across his face, too quick to name. "It is a 5-mile walk in the sun, not exactly a pleasant afternoon." "I have had worse." She had not meant to say it like that, with all the weight of her recent history behind the words, but there it was. Quinn studied her for a long moment, and she had the sense of being truly seen, all her secrets laid bare under that blue gaze. Finally, he nodded. "All right. But we leave in an hour, before the day gets too hot. And Miss Davies, I will not forget this kindness." They set out just after 9 o'clock, Quinn leading Senator by the reins while Jolene sat in the saddle. The horse moved slowly, favoring his injured leg but managing well enough. Quinn set a careful pace, stopping frequently to let the horse rest and to check the wrapping on his hoof. The road to the Double R Ranch wound through rolling hills dotted with oak trees and scrub brush. Wildflowers still bloomed despite the summer heat, painting the landscape in yellows and purples. The air smelled of dust and warm grass and something green underneath it all. It was beautiful in a stark way that made Jolene's heart ache. They did not talk much at first, both of them caught up in their own thoughts. But as the miles passed, Quinn began to open up, slowly at first and then with more ease. "Had Senator for 4 years now," he said, running his hand along the horse's neck. "Bought him off a rancher in Wyoming when he was just a colt. Meanest little thing you ever saw, all teeth and attitude. Took me 3 months to gentle him properly." "What made you stick with it?" Jolene asked. "Plenty of other horses in Wyoming, I imagine." Something in his eyes. "He was scared more than mean, you know. Someone had treated him rough before and he did not trust easy. I understood that." Quinn glanced up at her, squinting against the sun. Figured we could learn to trust together. Did it work? Well, I trust him completely now. As for Senator, I think he tolerates me on good days and puts up with me on bad ones. Jolene laughed, surprising herself. When was the last time she had laughed? She could not remember. Sounds like a solid relationship. Best I have got. The words held a loneliness that resonated in her bones. She shifted in the saddle, trying to find a more comfortable position, and Quinn noticed immediately. Your leg's getting tired, a bit. Been a while since I rode this long. We can stop, let you walk for a stretch. They found shade under a cluster of oak trees and took a longer rest. Quinn pulled out canteens and some jerky he had bought at the general store, and they shared the modest meal in companionable silence. Senator grazed on the dry grass, looking more comfortable than he had that morning. "Can I ask you something?" Quinn said after a while. Jolene tensed. "You can ask, I might not answer." "Fair enough." He took a swig from his canteen, then capped it carefully. "You have that look about you, the look of someone running from something. I have seen it in the mirror enough times to recognize it in others. Maybe I am just traveling. Maybe." He did not push, and somehow that made her want to tell him, to share the burden she had been carrying alone for so long. "I was accused of something I did not do," she said quietly, staring out at the hills. "Back in Kentucky. I worked as a housemaid for a wealthy family. The lady of the house, she never liked me, said I put on airs, though I never did anything but my work. One day her pearl necklace went missing and she found it in my room, said I stole it." "Did you?" "No." The word came out fierce. "I never stole anything in my life. Someone put it there, I know it. Maybe the lady herself, maybe another servant who wanted my position. Does not matter. Her word against mine, and I am just a maid from nothing. So I ran before they could throw me in jail or worse." Quinn nodded slowly, like this made perfect sense to him. "That why you are here? Running? I thought California would be far enough. Thought maybe I could disappear into the crowds, find work, start over. But it turns out running does not really solve anything. You are just alone in a different place." "Yeah," Quinn said softly. "I know that truth well enough." Jolene turned to look at him properly. "What are you running from?" For a moment she thought he would not answer. Then he sighed, a deep sound that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and tired. "I had a ranch. Small spread in Montana near Helena. Ran it with my brother Elijah. We were doing all right, nothing fancy but enough to live on. Then one winter, bad one, we lost most of our herd to the cold. Took loans to restock come spring, figured we would make it up the next year." He paused, jaw working. "But the next year was drought. Lost even more cattle. The bank came calling and we did not have the money." "What happened?" Elijah, he had this idea. Said he knew a man who would pay good money for horses, no questions asked. I should have said no. Should have known better. But I was desperate, and desperate men make stupid choices." Quinn's hands clenched into fists. "Turned out the horses were stolen from a ranch 3 counties over. We got caught trying to deliver them. Elijah tried to run. The rancher's men shot him, killed him right there in front of me." "Oh, Quinn." Jolene did not think, just reached out and put her hand on his arm. He flinched at the touch but did not pull away. "I went to jail for 6 months. When I got out, the ranch was gone, sold to pay debts. Elijah was buried in a pauper's grave. Everything we had built just gone." He finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was raw and terrible. "It was my fault. I should have stopped him. Should have found another way. Instead, I got my brother killed and lost everything that mattered." "It was not your fault," Jolene said firmly. "Desperation makes us all do things we would not otherwise do, and you did not pull the trigger. Might as well have." "No." She squeezed his arm, making him focus on her. "The men who shot him made that choice. You were trying to save your ranch, your livelihood. That does not make you a bad person. Quinn looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. How do you do that? Do what? Make it sound like maybe I am not the villain in my own story. Because you are not. You are just a man who made a mistake. We all make them. She pulled her hand back, suddenly self-conscious. The difference is whether we let them define us or whether we try to be better. And which are you doing, Miss Davies? I do not know yet, she admitted, still trying to figure that out. They sat in silence after that, but it felt different than before. Lighter somehow, like speaking their truths had lifted something heavy off both their shoulders. When they resumed their journey, Jolene felt the distance between them had shifted, grown smaller in some indefinable way. The Double R Ranch came into view just after noon, a sprawling complex of buildings nestled in a valley between two hills. The main house was a solid two-story structure painted white, with a wide porch and flower boxes in the windows. Beyond it stretched barns and corrals, bunkhouses, and equipment sheds. Cattle grazed in the near pastures, fat and healthy-looking. Impressive spread, Quinn said, and Jolene heard the longing in his voice. This was what he had lost, what he was still grieving. They found the ranch owner, a man named Robert Richardson, inspecting a fence line near the main corral. He was in his 50s, broad-shouldered and weather-beaten, with a gray mustache and sharp brown eyes. He looked up as they approached, his gaze moving from Quinn to Jolene to Senator with practiced assessment. "Help you folks." Quinn introduced himself and explained about the job. Richardson listened without interrupting, his expression giving nothing away. When Quinn finished, the rancher walked around Senator, noting the wrapped hoof. Horse is injured. Stone bruise. He will be fit in a week. I need men now, not in a week. Got 200 head to move to summer pasture and I am short 3 hands. Richardson crossed his arms. You have ranch experience. 5 years running my own spread in Montana. Before that, I worked cattle drives from Texas to Kansas. I know cattle, horses, and hard work. Why did you leave Montana? Quinn's jaw tightened, but he did not look away. Lost the ranch, bad luck, and worse decisions. But I am a good worker, Mr. Richardson. I will earn my pay and then some. The rancher studied him for a long moment, then looked at Jolene. What about you, miss? You his wife? No, sir. Just helped him get here since his horse could not carry his weight. That's so. Richardson's mustache twitched, might have been a smile. You know cattle? No, sir. But I know horses and I am a hard worker. If you need extra hands, I could help. Quinn turned to her, startled. Miss Davies, you do not have to. I know I do not have to. But I need work same as you, and it sounds like Mr. Richardson needs help. She met the rancher's eyes steadily. I will work for fair wages, whatever the job is. Richardson considered this, then nodded slowly. All right, here is my offer. You both can start tomorrow. Nolan, you will work the cattle drive, standard wages for a drover. Miss Davies, my wife could use help in the house while we are moving cattle. Her regular girl is visiting family in San Francisco, and she has been doing too much on her own. I will pay you the same as I paid Sally, 50 cents a day plus room and board. I accept, Jolene said immediately. Quinn looked like he wanted to argue, but Richardson was already moving on. Drive starts day after tomorrow, early morning. Takes about 3 days to get the cattle to the upper pasture. You will bunk with the other hands. Keep your nose clean and your work steady. There might be permanent positions available after the drive. He turned to Jolene. You come back tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock sharp. Ask for my wife, Mary. She will get you settled. They thanked Richardson and made their way back toward town. The sun hung lower in the sky now, and the return journey felt easier somehow, weighted with the relief of success. Quinn walked with a lighter step, and when Jolene looked down at him from Senator's back, she saw something like hope on his face. "You did not have to do that," he said after a while. "Take a job you do not want just because I needed one. Who says I do not want it? I need money same as anyone, and housework I understand." She paused. "Besides, this way I can check on Senator while you are out on the drive, make sure he heals up properly." Quinn smiled, a real smile that transformed his whole face. "That is kind of you. Maybe I am just kind." "Maybe you are." They made it back to Murphy's as the sun was setting, painting the sky in those same impossible colors. Quinn saw to Senator's care while Jolene went to tell Mrs. Patterson she would be working at the Double R Ranch for the next week or so. The widow accepted this news with a nod, and informed Jolene her bed would be held at a reduced rate since she would not be taking meals there. Jolene packed her few belongings that evening, preparing for the early departure the next morning. Through her window, she could see the stable out back, and she wondered if Quinn had found somewhere to sleep, or if he was bedding down in the stable with his horse. The thought bothered her more than it should. On impulse, she went downstairs and out to the stable. Sure enough, Quinn had made a rough bed in the empty stall, just a bedroll and his saddle for a pillow. He looked up when she entered, surprise crossing his face. "Miss Davies, something wrong?" "No, I just—" She felt foolish suddenly. "I wanted to make sure you were all right." "I am fine. Slept in worse places. Mrs. Patterson has rooms available. You could afford one now that you have a job coming. Rather save the money. Besides, I like being near Senator." He stood, brushing hay from his pants. "But I appreciate your concern." They stood there in the dim stable, lamplight from the house casting long shadows through the door. The air felt charged somehow, heavy with things unsaid. "Thank you," Quinn said finally. "For today, for all of it. I do not know if I would have gotten that job without your help." "You would have figured something out. Maybe, but it is nice not having to figure everything out alone." Jolene understood that sentiment deep in her bones. "Yes, it is. Miss Davies, can I ask you something?" "Jolene, call me Jolene." "Jolene." He said her name carefully, like it was something precious. "When we get back from the cattle drive, when Senator is healed and I hopefully have steady work, would you maybe want to have supper with me? Proper like, at the hotel restaurant." Her heart did something complicated in her chest. This was dangerous territory. She was running, hiding, not in a position to get close to anyone. Getting involved with Quinn was risky and foolish and everything she should avoid. "Yes," she heard herself say, "I would like that." His smile could have lit the whole stable. "Good. That is real good." She left him there and went back to her room, but sleep was a long time coming. Her mind kept replaying the day, the easy way she and Quinn had talked, the comfort she felt in his presence. It scared her how much she already cared about this man she barely knew. But it also felt like maybe, just maybe, something good was finally coming her way. Morning arrived too soon. Jolene dressed in the dark and gathered her bag, moving quietly so as not to wake the other boarders. Mrs. Patterson was already in the kitchen, setting out breakfast. "You are up early," the widow observed. "Need to be at the ranch by 7. Sit. Eat something first. You will work better on a full stomach." Jolene obeyed, grateful for the simple kindness. Mrs. Patterson served eggs and toast, strong coffee that chased away the last cobwebs of sleep. "That man, Nolan," the widow said as she poured the coffee. "He seems decent enough, he is. You watch yourself, girl. Decent or not, men are trouble, especially for young women alone in the world." "Yes, madam." But Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. "Though I suppose we all need a little trouble now and then, just to remind us we are alive." Quinn was already up and tending to Senator when Jolene emerged from the house. The horse looked better, standing squarely on all 4 legs now, the swelling in his hoof much reduced. Quinn had curry-combed him until his coat gleamed in the early morning light. "You are good with him," Jolene observed, setting down her bag. "He is good to me." Quinn ran his hand along Senator's neck affectionately. "Deserves the best care I can give him." They walked to the Double R Ranch together, Quinn leading Senator since the horse still should not carry weight. The morning was cool, the air fresh with dew. Birds sang in the oak trees, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called its last notes before retreating from the coming day. The ranch was already bustling when they arrived. Cowboys moved between the corrals, saddling horses and checking equipment. The cattle were gathered in a large holding pen, lowing and jostling against each other. Richardson stood in the middle of it all, directing operations with the calm authority of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. "Nolan," he called when he spotted them. "Get your horse settled and report to Jake Summers. He is the trail boss, that tall fellow by the barn. He will get you sorted." "Yes, sir." Quinn turned to Jolene, and for a moment something vulnerable crossed his face. "Good luck today. You too, be careful out there. Always am." He held her gaze a moment longer, then led Senator toward the barn. Jolene watched him go, then squared her shoulders and went to find Mary Richardson. The rancher's wife was in the kitchen, a large, airy room that smelled of bread and cinnamon. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with dark hair gone mostly gray and kind brown eyes. She looked up from rolling out dough when Jolene knocked on the door frame. "You must be Miss Davies. Robert said you would be here this morning." Mary wiped her hands on her apron. "Do you know your way around a kitchen?" "Yes, madam. I worked as a housemaid back in Kentucky." "Cooking, cleaning, laundry, whatever was needed." "Good. We have a lot of work ahead of us. With the men out on the drive, it is just us women here, but we still need to keep the household running. Can you start with breakfast for the hands who stayed behind?" "There are 6 of them, working on equipment repairs and such. They will be in around 8 o'clock, hungry as bears." Jolene rolled up her sleeves. "Yes, madam. What do you want to serve?" The day passed in a blur of work. Breakfast, then cleaning up after it, then starting preparations for midday dinner. Mary Richardson was exacting but fair, showing Jolene where everything was kept and explaining how she liked things done. The other woman who worked in the house, a young Mexican woman named Rosa, spoke little English but communicated plenty through gestures and smiles. Together, the 3 of them managed the endless tasks that kept a ranch household functioning. It was hard work, but Jolene found it satisfying in a way her position in Kentucky had never been. Here, she was not treated as lesser, not looked down upon. Mary Richardson worked alongside them, her hands in the dishwater same as theirs, and when they sat down for their own midday meal, they ate together like equals. "You are a hard worker, Miss Davies," Mary said, passing the bread basket. "Where did you say you were from?" "Kentucky, madam." "Long way from home. You have family there?" Jolene hesitated. This was where it got dangerous, where too many questions could unravel the new life she was trying to build. But something in Mary's eyes, a gentle understanding, made her answer honestly. "My grandfather passed some years back." "No other family to speak of?" Mary nodded slowly. "That is hard, being alone, but you have found your way here, and that takes strength. Robert and we appreciate good people. You keep working like you did today, there will always be a place for you at the Double R." The words settled something in Jolene's chest, a knot of anxiety she had been carrying since leaving Kentucky. Maybe, just maybe, she could stop running. Maybe Murphy's could become home. That evening, after the day's work was done, Jolene stood on the porch of the ranch house and looked out toward the hills where the cattle drive had gone. Quinn was out there somewhere, sleeping under the stars, doing the work he loved. She hoped he was all right. Hoped he was finding the same peace she was starting to feel. 3 days. That was how long the cattle drive would take. 3 days until she saw him again. She could wait that long. The next 2 days fell into a rhythm. Wake before dawn, help Mary with breakfast, clean the house, prepare dinner, tend the vegetable garden, do the endless laundry, make supper, fall into bed exhausted. It was hard work, but honest work, and Jolene felt herself settling into it like a plant finding good soil. Mary Richardson turned out to be a wealth of stories, filling the work hours with tales of the early days in California, when she and Robert first came west looking for gold. They had not found much in the streams, she said, but Robert had a knack for cattle, and slowly they built the ranch from nothing. 30 years we have been here, Mary said as they hung laundry on the line. Watched Murphys go from wild mining camp to actual town. Raised 3 children, though they are all grown now with families of their own. Robert Jr. runs a freight company in Sacramento. Our daughter Emily married a banker in San Francisco. And Thomas, our youngest, he is up in Oregon, bought himself a lumber mill. You must miss them, Jolene said. Every day. But they have their own lives, as they should. That is what you raise children for, to send them out into the world stronger than you were. Mary pinned a sheet to the line. You want children someday, Miss Davies? The question caught Jolene off guard. She had not thought about children in a long time, too focused on survival to imagine a future that stable. But now, with the California sun warm on her face and honest work in her hands, she let herself consider it. Maybe. If I find the right person to have them with. Mary smiled knowingly. That cowboy who brought you here, Nolan. He is the right person. I barely know him. Sometimes you just know. I met Robert in a mining camp, literally bumped into him in the street and spilled his coffee all over his shirt. He laughed. I apologized, and by the end of the day, I knew I was going to marry him. Sometimes it happens like that. Jolene thought about Quinn's gentle hands on his horse, the pain in his eyes when he talked about his brother, the way her heart had stuttered when he asked her to dinner. Maybe Mary was right. Maybe sometimes you just knew. On the evening of the 3rd day, she saw dust rising on the horizon and her pulse quickened. The cattle drive was returning. She tried to focus on helping Mary with supper, but her eyes kept drifting to the windows, watching for riders. The men came in just after sunset, tired and dusty but in good spirits. The drive had gone well, Richardson announced. All the cattle made it to the upper pasture without incident. They would rest tonight and head out again tomorrow to fetch the second herd. Jolene searched the faces of the returning cowboys, and there, finally, she spotted Quinn. He looked exhausted, his face sunburned and covered in trail dust, but he was smiling. When his eyes found hers across the yard, his smile widened into something that made her breath catch. She wanted to run to him, but that would be improper, too forward. Instead, she focused on serving supper, ladling stew into bowls for the hungry men. Quinn took his place at the long table in the bunkhouse dining area, eating with the focused attention of someone who had been living on jerky and hardtack for 3 days. "Good stew, Miss Davies," he said when she refilled his bowl. His voice was hoarse from days of shouting at cattle. "Thank you." "How was the drive?" "Long. Hot. But good. Real good. I had forgotten how much I missed this work." She wanted to ask more, wanted to sit beside him and hear every detail, but there were other men to feed, other tasks to complete. It was not until the meal was finished and the dishes washed that she finally had a moment to slip outside. Quinn was in the barn, as she somehow knew he would be, tending to Senator. The horse looked fully recovered, standing solidly on all 4 legs, no trace of the limp that had brought Quinn to Murphy's in the first place. "His hoof looks good," she said, announcing her presence. Quinn turned, and the weariness in his face lifted when he saw her. "Jolene, I was hoping I would see you before you headed back to town." I am not heading back tonight. Mrs. Richardson asked me to stay, help with breakfast for the men before they head out again tomorrow. Good. That is good. He set down the brush he had been using on Senator and took a step toward her. I thought about you, out there on the trail. Thought about how you helped me get this job, how you have been taking care of my horse while I was gone. Thought about a lot of things. What kind of things? Her voice came out softer than she intended. The kind of things a man thinks about when he meets a woman who makes him want to be better than he has been. Quinn moved closer, close enough that she could see the dust still caught in his eyebrows, the new sunburn across his nose. Jolene, I know we have not known each other long. I know you have got your own troubles, and Lord knows I have got mine, but I cannot stop thinking that maybe we found each other for a reason. Quinn, let me finish, please. He took a breath. I have been drifting for 2 years. Ever since Elijah died, ever since I lost the ranch, I have just been moving from place to place, doing whatever work I could find, not caring much about tomorrow. But these last few days, working cattle again, knowing you were here waiting, it made me think maybe I could build something again. Not alone this time, maybe with someone. Jolene's heart hammered against her ribs. This was too much, too fast. She should step back, put distance between them, protect herself. But she did not want to. What she wanted was standing right in front of her, looking at her with hope and fear and something that might be love if given time to grow. I am scared, she admitted. I am scared of staying in one place, of the people from Kentucky finding me, of building something just to have it taken away. I am scared of caring about you and having it turn out to be a mistake. I am scared too, Quinn said simply. Terrified, but I am more scared of letting you go and spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His calloused fingers lingered against her cheek, and she found herself leaning into the touch. Stay, he said softly. In Murphy's, I mean, stop running. Give this place a chance. Give us a chance. Quinn, what if nothing? I am not promising it will be easy. I am not promising we will not have hard days. But I am promising I will be here doing my best, trying to build something good, and I would really like it if you were here too. Jolene closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand against her skin, the solidity of his presence. She thought about the last 3 months, the fear and loneliness of running, the exhaustion of always looking over her shoulder. She thought about the last 3 days, the satisfaction of good work, Mary Richardson's kindness, the peace she had begun to feel. She thought about Quinn, gentle with his horse, honest about his failures, brave enough to hope again despite everything he had lost. All right, she whispered. I will stay. Quinn's breath hitched, and when she opened her eyes, she saw his were suspiciously bright. You mean it, I mean it. I am tired of running, and you are right. Maybe there is a reason we found each other. He smiled then, that transformative smile that made him look younger, less burdened. Can I hug you? Is that all right? In answer, she stepped into his arms. He held her carefully at first, like she might break, but when she wrapped her arms around his waist and held tight, he pulled her closer. He smelled of sweat and horses and trail dust, and she did not care one bit. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt safe. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other in the quiet barn while Senator munched hay contentedly, and the evening settled into night around them. When they finally pulled apart, Quinn kept his hands on her shoulders, like he could not quite bear to let go completely. That dinner I mentioned, he said. How about this Sunday? After church if you are inclined to go, or just midday if you are not. The hotel restaurant like I promised. Sunday sounds perfect. Jolene Davies, you have just made me the happiest man in California. She laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. It is just dinner, Quinn. No, he said seriously, it is not just anything, it is a beginning. He was right, she realized. This was a beginning, the start of something she had not even known she wanted, until it appeared in front of her in the form of a cowboy and his injured horse. Sunday came after another long cattle drive, this one successful as the first. Quinn had earned Richardson's respect with his hard work and knowledge of cattle, and the rancher offered him a permanent position as one of his lead hands. The job came with steady pay and a bunk in the ranch house, a step up from the communal bunkhouse where most of the hands slept. Quinn accepted immediately. Jolene continued working for Mary Richardson, and the arrangement suited them both so well that Mary asked her to stay on permanently even after the regular housemaid returned from San Francisco. They worked out a schedule where both women split the duties, giving each time for their own lives. For the first time since leaving Kentucky, Jolene had a real job, real pay, and a real place to lay her head at night. The fear that had been her constant companion began to loosen its grip, replaced gradually by something that felt almost like peace. Sunday afternoon found her in her best dress, the green calico she had been saving for a special occasion, standing outside the hotel restaurant in Murphy's. Quinn arrived right on time, freshly shaved and wearing clean clothes, his hair still damp from washing. He looked nervous and she found that endearing. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The restaurant was nicer than anywhere she had eaten in months, with real tablecloths and candles on the tables. They ordered steak and potatoes, and Quinn insisted she get dessert, apple pie with fresh cream. Over the meal, they talked about everything and nothing. He told her stories about the cattle drive, about the other hands who worked the ranch, about his plans to save money and maybe, someday, buy a small spread of his own again. She told him about growing up in Kentucky, about her grandfather and the horses, about the dreams she had once had before life got complicated. She even told him, haltingly, more details about the accusation that sent her running, the fear that still sometimes woke her in the night. "You ever think about going back?" Quinn asked. "Clearing your name, how would I do that? I've got no proof I did not take that necklace, just my word. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes the truth comes out in the end. Maybe." But she did not want to think about Kentucky, about the past and all its complications. She wanted to focus on this moment, this man across the table from her, the future that was starting to take shape. After dinner, they walked through town, past the shops and saloons, up toward the old mining claims that now sat abandoned, slowly being reclaimed by the land. The sun was setting, painting the world in gold and rose, and when they stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the valley, Quinn took her hand. "I know it has only been a week," he said. "I know people will say we are rushing, but Jolene, I have not felt this alive, this hopeful, since before everything fell apart in Montana. You did that, just by being you, by seeing something in me worth saving. You saved yourself," she said. "I just happened to be there. No, you were exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. That is not coincidence. That is something more." He turned to face her fully, both her hands in his now. "I am not asking for promises or commitments, not yet, but I am asking if maybe you feel this too. This thing between us. I feel it," she admitted. "It scares me, but I feel it. Then let it scare us together. Let us figure it out as we go." He squeezed her hands gently. "I am falling in love with you, Jolene Davies. I think I started falling the first moment I saw you watching me with Senator. Something in your eyes that told me you understood what it was like to be hurt and still be gentle." Tears pricked her eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever seen her so clearly. "I am falling too," she whispered. "I tried not to, tried to keep my distance, But Quinn, you make me want to believe in good things again." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes." The kiss was soft and sweet, a question and an answer all at once. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling, that slightly giddy feeling of new love making everything brighter. They walked back to town hand in hand as the stars emerged overhead, talking and laughing like they had known each other for years instead of just days. When they reached Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, Quinn walked her to the door like a proper gentleman. "Thank you for today," Jolene said. "For the dinner, the walk, all of it. Thank you for saying yes." He kissed her forehead. "I will see you tomorrow at the ranch, tomorrow." She watched him walk away into the darkness, his figure eventually disappearing down the street. But the warmth of his presence lingered, and she went to bed that night with a smile on her face and hope in her heart. The weeks that followed established a pattern. They saw each other daily at the ranch, stolen moments between work, conversations over meals with the other hands, careful touches when no one was looking. On Sundays, they had their time together, sometimes going to church and then dinner, other times just riding out to explore the countryside around Murphy's. Quinn borrowed a gentle mare from Richardson's string for Jolene to ride, and together they explored the hills and valleys, finding quiet places where they could be alone. They talked about their dreams, their fears, their pasts. Quinn opened up more about Elijah, about the guilt that still haunted him, and Jolene found herself sharing memories of her grandfather, of the good times before loss and accusation complicated everything. "You should write to your grandfather's friends in Kentucky," Quinn suggested one afternoon as they sat beside a creek, watching Senator and the borrowed mare drink. "Maybe someone there could help clear your name. I do not know anyone with that kind of influence. Still, might be worth trying. You deserve to have your name cleared, to not have to look over your shoulder." She leaned against him, taking comfort in his solid presence. "Maybe. But right now, I just want to enjoy this. Being here with you, building something new. The past can wait a while longer." "All right. But promise me you will think about it." "I promise." As summer deepened into August, their relationship deepened too. Everyone at the ranch knew they were courting, and no one seemed to mind. Mary Richardson, in particular, seemed delighted, often engineering situations where Quinn and Jolene would end up working near each other. "That woman is not subtle," Quinn said one day, after Mary specifically asked him to help Jolene move some heavy sacks of flour in the pantry. "No, but she means well." Jolene smiled up at him in the dim pantry. "I think she is hoping for a wedding." Would that be so bad? The question hung in the air between them. They had been courting for nearly 2 months now, and while neither had spoken the word marriage explicitly, it hovered around them like a promise. "No," Jolene said quietly. "It would not be bad at all." Quinn set down the flour sack he had been holding and pulled her close. "Jolene, I know we have not been together long by some standards, but I know my heart and I know what I want. I want to build a life with you. A real life with a home and maybe children someday and all the ordinary, extraordinary days in between. Quinn, I am not asking yet, not officially. I know you are still figuring things out, still healing from what happened in Kentucky, but I want you to know my intentions are serious. When you are ready, when you feel safe enough to say yes, I will ask you proper. Until then, I will be here, being the man you deserve." She kissed him then, there in the dusty pantry among the flour sacks and preserves, kissed him with all the love and gratitude and hope she had been holding inside. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, she said, "I am ready." "Ready for what?" "Ready for you to ask me." Quinn's eyes widened. "Jolene, are you sure? I do not want to rush you. You are not rushing me. I have never been more sure of anything." She took his hands, holding them between hers. These last 2 months have shown me what my life should be. You have shown me that it is possible to have something good even after everything goes wrong. I do not want to wait, Quinn. Life is too short and too uncertain. If you are asking, my answer is yes. I have not asked yet, he said, but his voice shook with emotion. Then ask. He dropped to one knee right there in the pantry, still holding her hands. Jolene Davies, you are the strongest, kindest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You saved me in ways I am still discovering. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to make you as happy as you have made me? Yes, she said through tears. Yes, absolutely yes. He stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around in the cramped space, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. When he set her down, he kissed her again, and this kiss held the promise of all their tomorrows. Mary Richardson found them a few minutes later still in the pantry and took one look at their faces and clapped her hands together. Finally. I was starting to think I would have to lock you two in here until you figured it out. You knew? Jolene asked. Dear girl, everyone knew. You two have been making eyes at each other since the day you arrived. Now come on, we need to tell Robert. He will want to throw you a proper engagement party. The engagement party was held the following Saturday, a simple affair in the ranch yard with all the hands and their families invited. Someone brought a fiddle, someone else a guitar, and soon there was music and dancing under the stars. Jolene wore a new dress that Mary had helped her sew, a soft blue cotton that brought out her eyes. Quinn could barely take his gaze off her all evening. You look like a man who won the lottery, Jake Summers, the trail boss, said to Quinn as they stood watching Jolene dance with one of the older ranch hands. Feel like it too, Quinn admitted. She is a good woman. You treat her right. Plan to spend my whole life doing exactly that. They set the wedding for September, giving them time to save a bit more money and make proper arrangements. Jolene wrote a careful letter to one of her grandfather's old friends in Kentucky, a lawyer named Thomas Martin, who had always been kind to her. She explained the situation, the accusation and her flight west, and asked if there was any way to clear her name. She did not expect much, but Quinn was right. She deserved to not live in fear. The reply came 3 weeks later, forwarded through the general store in Murphy's. Mr. Martin wrote that he had done some investigating, and it turned out the woman who had accused Jolene had a history of such accusations. 2 previous maids had also been accused of theft and dismissed. He had spoken to several people who worked in the household, and there were witnesses willing to testify that the lady had a habit of misplacing her jewelry and blaming the staff. While he could not guarantee a complete clearing of her name, he believed there was enough doubt that if Jolene ever wanted to return to Kentucky, she would not face legal action. The family, it seemed, had quietly dropped the matter after she left, not wanting the scandal of a trial to become public. Jolene read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She was not fully exonerated, but the weight of fear lifted nonetheless. She could stop running. She could put down roots without constantly looking over her shoulder. She showed Quinn the letter that evening, and he held her while she cried out 2 months of pent-up relief and fear and gratitude. It is over, she kept saying. It is really over. No, Quinn said gently. It is just beginning. The wedding took place on a perfect September morning, the sky a brilliant blue and the air carrying just the first hint of autumn coolness. They were married in the small church in Murphy's, with Mary and Robert Richardson standing up as witnesses. Jolene wore a white dress that Mary and Rosa had sewn together, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Quinn wore his best suit, his hair neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven and shining with joy. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher asked if Quinn would take Jolene as his wife, his "I will" rang out clear and strong. When it was her turn, she looked into his eyes and felt the absolute certainty of her decision. "I will." They exchanged simple gold bands that Quinn had bought in Sacramento with his saved wages. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Quinn kissed her, the small congregation erupted in cheers. The reception was held at the ranch, with food and music and dancing that lasted late into the night. Everyone from town who knew them came to celebrate, and Jolene felt overwhelmed by the warmth and acceptance. These people, who had been strangers just 4 months ago, had become family. As the evening wound down and guests began heading home, Quinn pulled Jolene aside to the barn, to the stall where Senator stood dozing. The horse lifted his head at their approach and whuffled softly. "Remember the first day we met?" Quinn asked, his arm around Jolene's waist. "You were watching me tend to Senator's injury and you offered to help. I remember, you looked like you needed a friend. I needed more than a friend, though I did not know it then. I needed you." He turned to face her, taking both her hands. "Jolene Nolan, my wife, I like the sound of that." "So do I," she said softly. "I have been thinking about something, about what you said that first day about horses sensing what is in your heart. Senator knew before I did that you were special. He trusted you immediately, and he is not a horse who trusts easily." Jolene smiled, reaching out to stroke Senator's nose. "He is a good judge of character. The best." Quinn moved to the shelf where he kept his grooming supplies and picked up a soft brush. He handed it to Jolene. "Will you brush him? One more time like you did that first day." She took the brush, curious about what he was getting at but happy to oblige. She began working on Senator's coat in long, gentle strokes, the familiar motion soothing. The horse leaned into the brush, clearly enjoying the attention. Quinn watched her for a moment, then spoke quietly. "I was thinking about my past, about Elijah, about the ranch I lost, about the mistakes I made. I have been carrying all of that like stones in a sack, weighing me down. Quinn, let me finish. I have been carrying all that, but you, Jolene, you have been brushing it away. Little by little, with your kindness and your trust and your love, you have been taking that weight off me, making me believe I could be more than my worst moment." Jolene stopped brushing, tears welling in her eyes. "You did the same for me, made me believe I could stop running. Then we saved each other." He stepped closer, his hand covering hers on the brush. "Brush away my past and stay. That is what I wanted to say to you that first day, but I did not have the words yet. Brush away my past and stay with me. Build a future with me. Love me despite all my rough edges and mistakes." "I do not have to brush away your past," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your past made you who you are. It taught you compassion and strength and how to be gentle even when life has been hard. I love you, Quinn, past and present and all the futures we have not lived yet." He kissed her then, deep and sweet, while Senator stood patiently beside them and the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient dance. They spent their wedding night in a room at the hotel in Murphy's, the same hotel where they had their first dinner together. It felt fitting, coming full circle. In the morning, they would return to the ranch where Richardson had offered them one of the small cottages usually reserved for married hands. It was not much, just 2 rooms and a small kitchen, but it was theirs. "What are you thinking about?" Quinn asked as they lay together in the pre-dawn darkness, Jolene's head on his chest. "How different my life is now than I thought it would be. 4 months ago, I was running scared, sleeping rough, certain I would never feel safe again. Now I am here, married to you, with a home and work I love. It feels like a dream. If it is a dream, I hope we never wake up." He kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Jolene Nolan. I love you too." They settled into married life with surprising ease. The cottage was small but comfortable, and they spent their evenings fixing it up, making it home. Jolene sewed curtains for the windows, and Quinn built shelves for her few books and the dishes Mary had given them as a wedding gift. They fell into a rhythm of work and rest, shared meals and quiet evenings by the fire. Quinn continued working as one of Richardson's lead hands, and his skill with cattle and horses earned him more responsibility. Within 6 months, Richardson made him foreman, overseeing all the ranch hands and helping plan the seasonal cattle movements. It was work Quinn loved, and he thrived under the responsibility. Jolene continued working for Mary Richardson, but as the months passed, it became clear she was needed less in the main house and more in her own. In the spring of 1879, she discovered she was pregnant. Quinn reacted to the news with such joy that he literally picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down again, worried he might hurt the baby. She laughed at his sudden carefulness, but it touched her how seriously he took his impending fatherhood. "I am going to do right by this child," he said that evening as they sat on their small porch watching the sunset. "Going to be the kind of father mine never was, present and patient and proud." "You will be wonderful," Jolene assured him. "You have the gentlest heart of anyone I know." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though the summer heat made the last months difficult. Mary Richardson fussed over her like a mother hen, insisting she rest more and work less. The other women on the ranch brought her food and advice, and Jolene felt surrounded by support in a way she never had before. Quinn was attentive to the point of comedy, barely letting her lift anything heavier than a fork. He talked to her belly every night, telling their unborn child stories about his day, about the ranch, about the life they would build together. "What if I am not a good mother?" Jolene asked one night, her fears surfacing as the due date approached. "What if I make mistakes?" "Then you will make mistakes and we will figure it out together." Quinn took her hand. "Jolene, you have the biggest heart of anyone I know. You are going to be an amazing mother. Our child is lucky to have you." Their son was born on a cold November morning in 1879, arriving with a lusty cry that announced his presence to the whole ranch. They named him Thomas Elijah Nolan, Thomas after the lawyer who had helped clear Jolene's name, and Elijah after Quinn's lost brother. Quinn held his son for the first time with tears streaming down his face. "Hello, Tommy," he whispered. "I am your papa, and I am going to love you every day of your life." Jolene watched her husband cradle their baby and felt her heart overflow. This was what she had run toward, though she had not known it at the time. This love, this family, this home. The first year of Tommy's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and first smiles, learning to navigate parenthood together. Quinn was true to his word, an involved and loving father who changed diapers and walked the floor with a colicky baby without complaint. Watching him with their son, Jolene fell in love with him all over again. When Tommy was 18 months old, Richardson called Quinn into his office for a private conversation. The rancher was getting older, he explained, and his children had no interest in taking over the ranch. Robert Jr. had his freight company, Emily's husband wanted her in San Francisco, and Thomas was committed to Oregon. "I have been thinking about the future of the Double R," Richardson said. "About who I want running it when I am too old or too dead to do it myself. I have watched you these last few years, Quinn. You know cattle, you know horses, and the men respect you. More than that, you care about this place. You have got vision for what it could be. Sir, I am not sure what you are asking. I am asking if you would be interested in a partnership. You buy in with a percentage, start building equity. When Mary and I are ready to step back, you take over operations. Eventually, when we are gone, you and Jolene inherit the whole spread." Quinn stared at him, unable to process what he was hearing. "Mr. Richardson, I do not have the kind of money for a partnership. I am not asking for money upfront. We will structure it so a portion of your wages go toward buying in. Take you 15, maybe 20 years to own it outright, but it will be yours. You have proved yourself, Quinn. This ranch needs someone who will love it like I have, who will take care of it and the people who work here. I think that is you. Quinn could barely speak past the lump in his throat. I do not know what to say. Say yes. Talk it over with your wife, but say yes. He went home and told Jolene, and she cried happy tears and held him close. Your own ranch, Quinn. You did it. You got it all back. We got it back, he corrected. This is ours, yours and mine and Tommy's. Everything I lost, everything I thought was gone forever, it came back better because I found you. They accepted Richardson's offer, and slowly, year by year, Quinn bought into the Double R. He and Jolene expanded the cottage, adding rooms as their family grew. A daughter named Rose came 2 years after Tommy. Then another son they named Joseph. And finally another daughter, little Mary, named after the woman who had given Jolene her first real job in California. The years passed in the way of lives well lived, full of work and joy and the occasional sorrow. They lost Mrs. Patterson to pneumonia when Tommy was 5, and Quinn cried at her funeral, remembering how the stern widow had given him a chance when he needed it most. Robert Richardson died of a heart attack when he was 73, and at his funeral, Quinn spoke about the man who had believed in a drifter with a lame horse and had given him not just a job but a future. Mary Richardson lived another 5 years after her husband, finally passing peacefully in her sleep with Jolene holding her hand. In her will, she left the last portion of the ranch to Quinn and Jolene, making them full owners of the Double R. She loved you like a daughter, Quinn said as they read the will together. She saved my life, Jolene replied. Both of them did. They gave us this chance. They ran the ranch together, partners in every sense. Jolene kept the books and managed the household, while Quinn oversaw the cattle and horses. Tommy grew into a fine young man who loved the land as much as his father did, and Joseph showed a talent for working with horses that reminded Quinn of his late brother. Rose had her mother's head for business and helped manage the ranch accounts as she got older. Little Mary was still young, but she had her father's gentle nature and spent hours in the stables, caring for the animals with tender devotion. On a warm evening in the summer of 1895, Quinn and Jolene sat on the porch of their expanded home, watching their children and grandchildren play in the yard. Tommy had married a sweet girl from Sacramento and had given them 2 grandchildren so far. Rose was courting a schoolteacher from town, and Joseph was talking about starting his own horse breeding operation on a parcel of land they owned to the north. "Remember the first day we met?" Jolene asked, her hand in Quinn's as it had been for countless evenings over the years. Every detail. You were standing at the fence watching me tend to Senator's hoof, looking like maybe you understood what it was like to need help. I did understand. I needed help as much as you did, maybe more. She leaned against him. Hard to believe that was 17 years ago. Best 17 years of my life. Quinn squeezed her hand. You know what I think about sometimes? About how close we came to missing each other. If Senator had not picked up that stone, if I had gone to a different town, if you had not stopped to watch me in the stable that day. So many things had to line up exactly right. Maybe they were always going to line up. Maybe we were always meant to find each other. Maybe so. He kissed her temple. I love you, Jolene Nolan, more today than yesterday, less than tomorrow. That is my line, she said, smiling. I said that to you on our first anniversary. And I have been stealing it ever since, because I have never heard truer words. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in colors that never got old, no matter how many times they witnessed the display. This was their life, built from nothing but hope and hard work and love that had started with a simple act of kindness in a stable. Senator had died the previous year, old and content, and they had buried him in the pasture where he used to graze. Quinn had grieved for weeks, mourning not just the horse but the reminder of how far they had come. That horse had brought them together, had been the catalyst for everything good in Quinn's life. But Senator's legacy lived on in the horses Quinn bred, in the stable Joseph was planning, in the lessons Quinn taught his children and grandchildren about treating animals with gentleness and respect. "Did I ever tell you what I wanted to say to you that first day?" Quinn asked suddenly. "In the stable when you were brushing Senator?" "No, I do not think so. I wanted to say, brush away my past and stay. Even then, before I knew you, before I had any right to ask, part of me knew you were going to change everything. I wanted you to brush away all the pain and mistakes and stay with me, build something better." Jolene turned to look at him, tears shining in her eyes. "I did stay. You did. And you brushed away my past, or maybe you helped me make peace with it. Showed me that losing Elijah and the ranch was not the end of my story, just a painful chapter. You did the same for me. Showed me I could stop running, that I deserved love and a home in all of this." She gestured at the ranch spread out before them, at their children and the life they had built. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, their grandchildren were called inside for supper, and the sounds of the ranch settling into evening surrounded them. Somewhere in the stable, a horse whinnied, and Quinn smiled at the familiar sound. "We did all right, did we not?" he said. "We did more than all right. We did beautifully." They sat there as the night deepened, two people who had found each other in desperate times and had built something lasting. The Double R Ranch would pass to their children and their children's children, a legacy of love and hard work. The town of Murphys would remember them as the couple who ran the best ranch in Calaveras County, who treated their workers fairly and gave back to their community. But more than any of that, they would be remembered by each other, by the quiet moments and the loud joys, by the struggles overcome and the love that sustained them through it all. Quinn Nolan had been a broken man when he rode into Murphy's with a lame horse and empty pockets. Jolene Davies had been a woman running from a past that threatened to define her. Together, they had found healing and hope, and a future neither could have imagined. And it had all started with a simple act of kindness in a stable, with gentle hands on a horse and the courage to ask for help. Sometimes Jolene thought that was all it took. One moment of compassion, one person seeing another's need and choosing to meet it. From such small seeds, entire lives could grow. As they finally stood to go inside, Quinn pulled Jolene close one more time. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For stopping that day, for helping a stranger, for staying, for loving me, for all of it. Thank you for asking me to stay, for seeing something in me worth loving, for giving me a home." They kissed there on the porch they had built together, in the life they had made from nothing. And the kiss held all the love of 17 years and the promise of however many more they were granted. Inside, their family waited, their children and grandchildren, the legacy of two people who had refused to let their pasts define their futures. The house was full of noise and love and life, exactly as it should be. Jolene Nolan, formerly Davies, no longer a woman running but a woman rooted, took her husband's hand and walked inside to join her family. The past was behind her, forgiven if not forgotten. The future stretched ahead, bright and full of promise. And in between, in the eternal present, she had everything she needed. Love, family, home, and the man who had asked her to stay and had spent every day since making sure she never regretted that choice. They were both exactly where they were meant to be, two broken pieces that had found each other and become whole. The Wild West was settling, towns becoming cities, frontier becoming civilization. But here on the Double R Ranch in the hills of California, their love story would endure, passed down through generations as proof that sometimes, even in the hardest times, love finds a way. And all because a woman stopped to help a cowboy with his horse, and he had the wisdom to ask her to stay.